Okay, future game designers, there is one more thing that I wanted to do with my bomb, even though I don't plan to use it in my game. There's a good chance that you do, and I want to show you how to use particles. Now, I'm going to go to my bomb scene, so I've got to scroll down and find it. Let me make sure everything is going well. All right, so bomb scene, here we go. And you can see that I've actually, what my goal is to get some sparks coming off of my, my fuse here. Now I meant to delete that, so I'm gonna go ahead and delete that node and rebuild it so you can see what I've done. So you can see I'm in my bomb scene, an area 2D, and I am going to add as a child a particles 2D. Now, if you can't find it, remember you can start typing in particles 2D, and you'll notice that there's two different ones. There's a CPU particles 2D, and then there's a particles 2D. Now, I'm not completely sure, and in fact, I'm not even partially sure that I fully understand the difference, but I do know that when I've exported games, in particular 3D games, that use particles 3D, it doesn't show up in my Android phone. And so when I switched to CPU particles 3D on my 3D game, it did work. So I think it really depends on your target audience, what kind of machine you're going to run this on. And I'm going to assume that we're making a computer game, so I'm going to use particles 2D, which works on every computer I've ever used. So I'm going to go ahead and say create. And right now, you'll notice that nothing is happening. Now, my particles will start coming from the origin of my particles node. So if I click on move and then move that over to where my fuse is, then when I do get this set up right, that's where those particles will originate from. You can see that I do have a bit of a warning here, and it says that there's not a materials process, or let me read that. Material to process the particles is not assigned, so no behavior is imprinted. Well, we're gonna fix that straight away. So I've gotta move my giant head. I'm gonna come over here to process material. Right now it's empty. I'm gonna say new particles material, and immediately you'll notice that some dots start dropping. So it is emitting some particles. By the way, you can turn that off or on. The amount is how many particles can exist in the world from this emitter at a time. So you can turn that up and down, and we will do that. But I'm going to show you some changes or some things in the inspector that I changed that I felt got me a pretty good result. You can play around with this for a long time until you get what you're looking to get. By the way, you'll notice that there is a portion for textures. So if I wanted to, for example, not have a white dot, but instead an actual image that I've created, you can go into your PNGs and choose something. For example, if I wanted to use my explosion sprite or PNG, you can see that it will emit that. But for what I'm doing for right now, I'm going to clear that and just focus on using this default dot. So one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to go into time, and you can actually change how long your particle lives. So right now it's set for 1 second, but if you wanted your particles to live longer, you can adjust that. But the slider is really tough to use, so you'll probably want to type in an actual value. And you can see that now for 2 seconds, my particle exists in the world, and it's spread them out quite a bit, because remember, I'm saying I only want 8 particles at a time. So another thing that you can do is you can change the speed, which I know I did earlier. I wanted these to move a little bit faster, and you can see that I've adjusted that. And there is, of course, an option to have your particles move at different speeds by upping the randomness. But I'm going to go back down here to process materials. And when I click on this, you can see it gives me some other options. One of the options is gravity. I don't want my sparks to move down. In fact, if anything, I want them to go up, because I feel like that's how sparks and fire work. So right now I have a positive number on the Y. And if I change that to say -3, you can see that now it starts to move upwards. And the bigger the number, the more that gravitational pull will be up. So if I did 6, you can see now it's being pulled up by a greater value. But I'm going to leave it just like that for now. I am going to come down here to color, because right now my sparks are white, and I would prefer to have them be kind of a yellow-orange. If I wanted to, I could create a little bit of variation by changing these values. But one of the things that seems to happen is they always tend to go to the cool side. So when you slide them to the extremes, you get like a blue or a green. And so I probably wouldn't play with that too much in this case. And then you can have random values. So if I slide this up, I'll get a little bit of randomness depending on, well, my variation isn't very good. So if I change my variation, you can see some of them are bluish, yellowish, orange. So there's some variety. I'm going to leave that there. Although I'm not in love with it, I don't think that's really what I want. Something, I don't know. I probably wouldn't have variation, but you could have variation here. One thing that I do want to vary is my scale, because these are pretty small. Again, the slider really gets really aggressive. So you might say that I want the maximum up scaling to be 3, and then you can change the randomness so that you have some different, each particle or spark is a little bit different. Another thing that I want to change is I want to change my radial acceleration, which will cause my sparks to sort of fire off in different directions. So I'm going to, that will just move it in one direction. And if I want to create, I must be in the wrong one. Let's see, which one did I want? I feel like earlier today, that did what I wanted it to. It's threw them off into different directions, but apparently I'm on the wrong thing. So we'll get it figured out. I also don't necessarily want all my particles to come out from one point, so I can change my emission shape. So in this case, I could change it to a sphere, and that must have been what I was missing earlier, because now you can see my radial acceleration is sending them out in all different directions. And maybe I want to dial down the randomness there. Let's see. So again, you probably can play with this, and that's kind of an effect that I can live with. If you want more sparks, of course, at a time, you can turn this up, and you can see it generates far more particles. So you can play with that. If you only want something to happen once, like let's say you want chunks of rock to fly off when a missile hits it, for example, you could say that it was a one shot, and then once it comes up to the maximum amount, then it will stop. And then it shuts emitting off. All this stuff, of course, is able to be manipulated in code. And so I have some sparks coming out of my bomb. I'm not positive I want to change anything else about it. And you'll see when I run my game, each one of the bombs, each instance is going to have those particles showing. And you can see that each one has, the fuse has been lit. And you might decide, well, that's actually, you can barely see it. So you might want to change the scale. So in this case, I think the maximum scale up was 3, but perhaps I want it to be 5. I could create a spark texture using either, well, whatever sprite editor I want to use, like Piskel. And in this case, you can see I am emitting larger sparks. And so that's just an easy way to add an animation. I haven't really done any coding. All I've done is added a Particle2D node, decided where I wanted those particles to come from, and then played around with the inspector until I got an effect I liked. So I'm probably going to use the particles to create bubbles that come out of some of my objects. And that's what I'm going to do because I'm doing an oceans themed game. But for those of you who are just making a more traditional Fruit Ninja type game with bombs, you might have been agonizing over how to get that right animation in a Godot. It's really easy. You just add a Particles2D, make a few decisions about it. And again, I only touched briefly on some of these things. You can do it, and I don't remember exactly which one does it, but you can have it so that the particles spin. That might be angular velocity. Let's see. So you can see now my particles are spinning. And it really, in order to get familiar with it, you just got to play around until you get an effect that you're really satisfied with. And I think if I was building a traditional game and I just wanted some sparks on my fuse, I think that probably would have done the trick. So you can, so that's one more trick in your toolbox for using Godot to create a special effect. Thanks for watching, and I hope you were able to learn a little bit about using something new that you may not have known about. Thank you.